So yeah, my talk this year is on managing your editing workflow because, well, it's one of those really simple things that I don't think people give much thought, and it can really make or break the efficiency of your VN. Additionally, a lot of the techniques that I'm going to describe here, you could probably apply them to an entire editing, or sorry, an entire writing team as well, and not necessarily just for editing. So the first thing that I'd like to discuss is team size. So generally, what ends up happening is the bigger your team is, the less reliant on any one person's contribution it is. So that's really good because it means that if life gets in the way or something, or somebody's not quite as skilled as somebody else, then other people can pick up the slack as needed. However, it is more costly, and it can, depending on the type of direction that is given, or like the type of team structure that you have, result in too many cooks in the kitchen. Secondly is the importance of a style guide, or originally this was style guide and other front-loading documents. So generally having a style guide will mitigate the too many cooks in the kitchen issue. And it's also really good because it communicates your expectations of what you want the script to look like. For example, I, as a Canadian, tend to use open end dashes. And a lot of Americans are very confused about that, but that's just kind of how I was educated. So oftentimes I'll be asked, like, why didn't you use an M dash, not spaced at all? And then I have to explain, oh, well, that's how I was taught. Secondly, it also allows you to, if you have dialogue samples, for example, or even full character write-ups, that's usually good as well, because then it means, okay, this is kind of what you're looking for in terms of dialogue. This will allow me to know if something feels kind of out of character, then I can change it, that sort of thing. Additionally, if you do make a style guide, you can reuse it, or if you make a character profile thing, you can reuse that as a template, which is always nice to have, because then it makes future projects that much easier as well. So here's an example of how I typically structure projects when I'm working on them. So usually what you have is the project lead or head writer. It really depends on how you want to break up the various duties. Then beneath them is a lead editor. Of course, this is also for teams. Like, some people will just hire one editor and that's it. And then you have, sometimes it's good to have the lead writer come in as well and check over the script to make sure that it meets their expectations too. And then beneath them, you have other editors and proofreaders. Now, the importance of having a team lead is that, as it says here, it cuts down on chaos. It's also generally good to play to people's strengths. Like, I myself would, as egotistical as it sounds, feel that with the amount of experience that I have, for example, just proofreading would be not really a waste, but it wouldn't really be as advantageous as, say, putting me in a more intensive position. And the same goes for people who may not have much experience and may only be confident in their proofreading skills. So the more important thing, though, isn't really the team structure, it's the process. So this is usually the process that I use. So what tends to happen is Google Docs suggestion mode, although it can result in minor errors slipping through just as a result of how messy it can be to use, is generally good because you can manually accept and deny any suggestion that a person puts in your script. And it's a really good check and balance. So generally what happens is the person who's editing goes through in suggestion mode or clean copy, it depends on what you prefer. Then the project lead accepts, rejects, and asks questions about those suggestions. The editor will then answer those comments and revise. Then at the end, you will do proofreading. And I usually use Grammarly for this, but Grammarly is not a tool for fiction. So that's why it says manual check, because just inputting, accepting the changes, and then pasting your document will, A, generally mess with its formatting a bit, and B, will usually result in things that it would see as errors that are still natural English. It's just not really the type of slightly more formalized English that Grammarly tends to prefer. So then after that, there's a final check, which is generally rereading. And I personally like to highlight things as I go to make sure that I've reread it. And then you give it to the project lead or the lead writer, and then you revise and answer comments. So this is a very good system of checks and balances, because at most, if you're doing a very long script and it's already written, you only have to look at it like usually 3 or 4 times before it should be done. Now, in contrast, for larger teams, this is pretty much the exact same process, as you can see. So instead, the lead goes through and clean copy. Usually it's more advantageous for the lead editor to do that, if only because then it cuts down on the amount of work that a project lead or head writer will have to do, especially if there's other scenes being written or if there's revisions that need to be made. So following that, at least one other editor goes through it in suggestion mode. The lead accepts and rejects. Then proofreading, Grammarly happens, final checks happen. Then at the end, you give it to the project lead or the lead writer, and they will determine whether or not it's good enough. And then you just kind of repeat the process as before. So generally, I've found that these are the most efficient methods. Obviously, I'm sure that whatever works best for your project and its needs will work best for it. One size doesn't fit all with everything, after all. But yeah, I've found that this division of duties tends to result in like everybody contributes to a decent amount, to a decent degree. It's very efficient. Ideally, team size is between 1 and 3. So usually you want somebody doing the more broad strokes editing, somebody doing like proofreading and questioning the script if possible, and then usually somebody else as like just a third set of eyes to look over things and to do kind of the in-between of here's dialogue edits or here's edits to narration, that sort of thing. It depends on, as I said, their strengths as well. So does anybody have any questions?
Let's see here. So many editing jokes are happening right now. Anyone have any questions here?
So for the question about the interrobang, technically both of those are incorrect. I prefer the one with the exclamation mark first. I think it looks better. How do you voice act a character being interrupted if it's a VN? I don't really think that's a question for me necessarily, but the way I denote it in scripts is by putting an M, like cutting off the word and putting an M dash at the end of a line so that it looks like the word itself is being cut off.
Yeah, I do that too when I translate. Like you hacked a sentence in a way to just, obviously they want to continue.
Yeah. I mean, fair. Let's see. Can I write all of your games? Well, I mean, no, but I can work on a significant number of them if you send me a DM. I can definitely try.
Yeah. Man, I've been on the receiving end of a lot of editing stuff. Not yours directly, but just in general. It's like it's like, oh yeah, it's like one my favorite one is like the spacing of ellipses, because Japan uses a lot of them, and I kind of that transition. And so the official SP style guide, I think, wants the ellipses to be unspaced, no spaces before and after. But I habitually put spaces in, so I think I got one game that had like about 1,000 of those. Just boom.
How much does it cost to hire all of these editors? Well, it depends. It varies from person to person. Like I usually go based on the project's needs, but I try not to go below 2 cents per word myself, because professionals make 4 cents per word, and I would really rather not isolate people who need the help.
Someone's asking if there's an example of a style guide that you could share or something that they can see.
So I don't actually make them myself, but Wolf, would you be comfortable with me sharing the Watercress one once I've had a chance to work on it with you and Elk? Okay, perfect.
Sweet.
What are my thoughts on more prose heavy styles? So generally it depends. Like I've seen it as kind of a slippery slope in that some people will just put in so much unnecessary verbiage in their writing to the point where it's not even effective. It just comes across as very unnatural. Like a VN to me relies so heavily on your language being natural for the characters in the world that you're trying to build, And so there's that. There's also the fact that, you know, because you have certain visual indicators, you may not want to state things. It might be redundant to. Like if you say, oh, character adopts a flat expression and they have a flat expression visually, then there's no point in saying that. At least in my opinion.
Okay, so there's a link over there. It's a style guide, which will be awesome. Cool. All right, we have about a minute or so. So I'm going to hand presenter mode over to Bayou so he can get set up.
Thank you very much, by the way.
Thank you. That was awesome.